It was 2:07 in the morning, the barn lit only by the glow of red heat lamps. The air smelled of straw, damp earth, and something sharp, birth in progress. This homesteader crouched on his knees beside the massive sow, his hands trembling as he listened. A thin squeal cut the silence, high and desperate. Then it stopped. The sow shifted her weight with a grunt and rolled heavily to one side. That was when he saw it. In the mound of straw at her flank, what looked like afterbirth twitched. At first, it seemed like a trick of the shadows. Then the shape jolted. Something inside was kicking. His breath caught. He slid his hand into the warm, wet straw. Heat pressed against his skin. His fingers found slick membranes stretched tight, but no sound of breath. Beside him, his wife's whisper cracked. "Don't. It might just be waste." He pulled the bundle free. It was limp, slippery, lifeless. For one sickening heartbeat, he thought he was holding nothing more than tissue. Then, tap. A faint thud against his wrist. His face drained white. Inside the sack was a piglet, sealed alive. But how many more were still hidden? How long before the next roll crushed another? And what if he was already too late? Hours before that pale moment in the red-lit barn, the signs had already begun. The sow had been restless all evening, pawing at the straw, dragging mouthfuls of hay into a corner, turning the pen into a lopsided nest. She circled, lay down, then rose again, grunting low as if something inside her wouldn't let her settle. The family had seen this before, but tonight felt different, longer, sharper, as though she was trapped in a cycle she couldn't break. By 10 p.m., the security camera was on, angled straight into the pen. The homesteader and his wife sat in the house, their phones glowing as they checked the live feed every few minutes. Out in the barn, heat lamps burned red against the rafters, casting thick shadows over the straw. Rails had been rigged hastily along the walls, meant to keep newborns from being crushed when the mother rolled. It was a simple precaution, but every time the sow heaved her bulk against the boards, they wondered if it would be enough. Then came the first shock, 2 piglets sliding out at once. For a moment they thought it was a trick of the camera, but no, the sow had delivered twins in a single push. They lay in the straw like pale commas, slick and trembling. The wife's hand flew to her mouth. "Is that normal?" she whispered. The husband shook his head. "I've never seen it." Was this a blessing or a sign of trouble building deeper inside? Minutes later, another problem. One tiny piglet's cord refused to close. Blood trickled steadily into the straw, far more than seemed safe. The man knelt beside it, pressing with his thumb, his mind racing. If this were the NICU, there would be clamps, sterile tape, equipment. But this was the barn, and the only thing between life and death was a length of string and steady hands. He tied it tight, praying it would hold. The piglet coughed weakly, its nose flecked with red. How long before the bleeding started again? Hours dragged. The sow strained, then rested, then strained again, her sides heaving. But the gaps between contractions grew longer, her eyes glassy with exhaustion. The family whispered back and forth. Should they call the vet? Should they reach in? "If we step in too soon, we make it worse," he muttered. His wife's reply was sharp. "And if we wait too long, we lose them all." The stakes loomed in their minds. Everyone on a farm knows the dangers of the first 2 days. Piglets crushed under their mother's weight, chilled when the heat lamps flicker, bled out from cords that never sealed. Survival is never guaranteed, even in the best conditions. Tonight was not the best. Questions mounted with every passing hour. Why wasn't the labor progressing? Could a sow truly keep delivering after so many hours without collapse? And what about that strange twitch they'd both noticed, what they thought was afterbirth shifting in the straw? Was it really waste or something alive and running out of time? By midnight, the barn was thick with tension, the air too hot, too quiet between contractions. The family sat rigid in the glow of the lamps, waiting, counting, listening for squeals that came late or not at all. Every sound seemed loaded with meaning. Every pause could be the last. And still the sow labored on. The hours dragged on in the heavy red glow of the heat lamps. Every sound from the pen seemed magnified, the grunt of the sow, the squeak of straw, the fragile cries of the newborns. Then, on the grainy screen of the security camera, the first strange thing happened. Two slick bodies slid out at the same time, tumbling into the straw together. The man leaned closer, squinting at the feed. "That's not normal," he muttered. His wife's eyes widened. Or is it? Neither of them had seen it before. They rushed out, hearts racing. Both piglets twitched weakly, alive. Relief came quick, but so did a question neither wanted to voice. If she could push two at once, how many more might still be trapped inside? Minutes later came the second shock. One tiny piglet's cord pulsed with blood that refused to stop. The straw beneath it turned dark as the flow kept seeping. The wife's NICU training snapped into place. She knelt in the straw, tied the cord with a scrap of clean string, rubbed the little chest until a thin squeal cut the night. For a moment they felt hope, but behind it loomed another fear. How long before blood loss became fatal? What if another started bleeding while they were busy saving this one? The sow groaned, shifting her enormous body. With a grunt, she rolled, and the world seemed to tilt. A wall of flesh pressed against the litter, pinning straw and squealing voices beneath it. Then silence. The man's blood went cold. He grabbed the rake, pulling at the bedding, flattening the mound that had trapped them. Tiny bodies scattered, squeals bursting back to life. Relief hit again, sharp and brief. Yet the doubt clawed closer. Were they really saving them? Or were they only creating new hazards each time they moved the pen? Just as they caught their breath, a runt disappeared behind the sow's thigh. For a long second, there was nothing but the sound of her breathing. Then a faint cough broke the silence. Panic flared, but the husband forced his movement steady. He shoved his hand under the sow's flank, searching until his fingers found a slick snout. He cleared the moisture, and the runt gasped, coughing weakly. Saved, but for how long? If she kept rolling, how many more would vanish in silence before they could reach them? The next sign was subtler, and it nearly slipped by. Near the sow's flank, a sodden mass of afterbirth shifted. The wife frowned. It's just reflex. But the man's eyes narrowed. The movement came again, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. A kick. He froze. Could something inside still be alive? How long could it last, trapped and breathless? Another contraction brought another body, but this one came coated in a translucent film. The heat lamps worked against it, drying the membrane over the piglet's face like plastic wrap. Its tiny chest convulsed, but no air came. The man grabbed a towel, swiping fast, rubbing, clearing. The sound that followed, a gasp, then a squeal, snapped the barn back into motion. A life stolen back from seconds away. But how many more minutes like this could they endure? As he adjusted the rails again, his boot caught on a packed ridge of straw. He kicked it down and froze. Tiny footprints pressed deep inside, lined with streaks of red. A hidden pocket. His throat tightened. They scraped the wall flat, repositioned the boards. The channel was safer now, but the question burned. Had one already been lost in there before they saw it? And then came the moment that would leave him pale. He bent to lift what he thought was another pile of afterbirth, slick and limp in his palm. For an instant, he felt nothing but waste. Then, a faint thump against his skin. He froze. His wife's whisper trembled. If it kicks again, tear it. His hands shook as he waited, terrified of being wrong. Another twitch. He ripped the sack open. A nose, a mouth, one quick wipe, then a cough, a gasp, a cry. He tied the cord with shaking fingers and set the tiny body against a teat. Alive. Somehow, alive. But even as relief flooded through him, the security cam pinged again. On the screen, the sow's sides tightened, muscles bunching for another push. He turned, counting heads in the straw. 1, 2, 3, 11, 12. His heart hammered. Were they finally done? Or was she still holding one more life inside? The barn was suffocating with heat, the air thick with the smell of straw and sweat. Then, just when they needed it most, the power flickered. The red lamps buzzed, dimmed, then came back. The man froze, watching shadows dance across the walls. If the lights failed, the chill of night would seep in, and the piglets wouldn't last an hour. Another contraction hit. The sow strained, her flanks rippling like thunder through the straw. 2 newborns squealed, their tiny bodies trapped beneath her rolling weight. One cry cut off mid-note. "Move, move!" the wife shouted, diving toward the rail. "I got it!" He jammed the rake under the sow's belly, levering her bulk just enough. The wife snatched up one piglet, holding it to her chest. The other was silent. "Clear the mouth," he barked. "Already on it." She rubbed furiously with a towel. A faint gasp answered, followed by a wet squeal. Relief cracked through the panic, but only for a second. The sow groaned, muscles tensing again. "Another one's coming," the wife warned, eyes locked on the sow's straining sides. The man grabbed his gloves. "I'm going in." Her head snapped toward him. "No, if you tear something, she'll lose them anyway." The moral fight cut sharp between them. He reached for the sow's flank, but his wife's hand clamped on his wrist. "You can't just pull. You could do more harm than good." "And if I don't?" his voice cracked. "Then what?" The sow bellowed, surging against the rails. A hoof lashed out, grazing his forearm. Pain shot up to his elbow, but he didn't pull back. His hand slid under her, pressing against damp flesh, searching desperately for a chest rise. "Tell me what you feel," she shouted, her voice trembling. Still moving, but faint. "Then wait." "I can't." The lamps buzzed again, dipping low. The barn seemed to breathe in time with the sow, every contraction dragging them closer to disaster. He pressed harder, feeling the weak thump against his palm. The next contraction would crush the air out of it for good. "String ready?" he barked. "In my pocket." She pulled it out, fingers fumbling. "Okay, tie if I clear it. Just don't rip too hard." The sow surged. A slick shape slid halfway free, trapped in a fold of membrane. "Head's covered!" the wife shouted. "I see it!" He tore the film back, wiping frantically. The piglet coughed once, then went still. "No, no, no, come on," she whispered, rubbing its chest, shaking it gently. Nothing. His chest hollowed. For one line of grief, silence claimed them both. "Lost it," he said softly. Her eyes burned, but she nodded. "Then save the next." No time for mourning. The sow strained again. Another shape appeared, limp but breathing. "Lift," he ordered. She hooked her hands beneath the slick body, tugging it free. He tied the cord with shaking fingers, rubbed its chest until a thin squeal pierced the night. Alive, one gone, one saved. That was the rhythm of the barn. They set the squealer down by the others, nudging it toward a teat. For a moment it fumbled, weak, slipping past its siblings. Then it latched, barely. The man sagged, wiping sweat from his brow. "That's the runt," his wife whispered, staring at the fragile body. "Yeah," he said, voice hoarse. "The one I pulled from the sack." The tiny piglet suckled weakly, its whole body trembling, but it clung on, determined. The man let out a long breath. "She's not done," he muttered, watching the sow's sides ripple again. His wife's eyes narrowed. Then we'd better be ready. The lamps steadied for now, but the questions pressed harder than ever. How many more? How long before the sow collapsed from exhaustion? And how many times could they steal life back from the edge before the barn claimed it for good? By morning, the barn was quiet except for the soft chorus of squeals. The family sat slumped against the rails, faces gray with exhaustion. Every hour of the night replayed in their heads, the roll, the bleeding cord, the limp little body he had torn from the sack. They had saved most, but the question still gnawed. Had they done the right thing, or had they simply gotten lucky? When the vet's truck crunched up the gravel drive just after sunrise, relief washed over them. A seasoned breeder might have been enough, but today they needed a professional eye. The man stood quickly, brushing straw from his jeans, heart pounding harder than he wanted to admit. Inside the barn, the vet crouched by the litter. His hands moved with calm precision, turning over piglets one by one, checking cords, joints, lungs. Then he paused at the runt, the one pulled from the sack. Its body was still fragile, its nose scarred faintly from dried membranes, but it nursed weakly, determined. The vet looked up. "This one," he said slowly, "was born in caul." The family blinked at him. "In a full membrane sac," the vet explained. "It's rare, but it happens. Looks like afterbirth, but inside, the piglet's still alive, sealed in. If you hadn't torn it open..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "It would have drowned." No question. The man felt the color drain from his face again, just as it had in the night. "So what I pulled from the straw at 2 a.m., it wasn't waste?" The vet's voice was steady, firm. "No, it was a living piglet running out of air." The words hit harder than any sleepless hour. He could still feel the slick bundle in his hands, the limp weight, the faint tap against his wrist. He had nearly tossed it aside. Instead, by instinct or desperation, he had given it a chance. The vet continued his checks. "You had double pushes, too? 2 piglets at once?" The wife nodded quickly. "Yes, twice." "Not common," the vet admitted. "Toward the end of a long labor, the uterus can expel more than one at a time. It's rough on the sow. Increases the risk of rollovers, cords tearing too short, even bleeding out." His gaze flicked toward the corner where bloodied straw still clumped. "That one you tied. Likely wouldn't have survived otherwise." The man swallowed hard. "So the string made the difference." The vet's tone left no doubt. "First 48 hours are the danger window. Crushings, hypothermia, cord bleeds. You cut the odds by being here. Half of what you did was luck. The other half was instinct. Either way, you saved lives." Silence filled the barn, broken only by the squeals of piglets jostling for a teat. The weight of what might have been pressed heavy on all of them. The vet straightened. "Do me a favor," he said, motioning toward the house. "Show me that security feed." Together they rewound the grainy footage. Hours collapsed into minutes, labored breathing, rolls, rails scraped into place. And then, on the screen, the moment that froze them all. The afterbirth bundle shifted once, faintly, long before the man had touched it. A movement so small it might have been missed by anyone not watching closely. "There," the vet said, pointing. "That's it." "That's your end call." The wife clutched her husband's arm, eyes wide. "We almost walked away." The vet nodded. "And you'd never have known." Sometimes the difference between life and loss is whether someone notices the smallest twitch. The man stared at the screen, pale once more, remembering the cold feel of the sack in his palm, the moment he almost set it aside. He looked back toward the pen, where the runt nursed quietly among its siblings. Against all odds, it was alive. 2 days later, The barn sounded different, not frantic, not strained, just alive. A steady chorus of squeals rose and fell under the hum of the heat lamps. Most of the piglets were latched, bellies round, tiny tails flicking in rhythm. The rails held strong, the bedding had been thinned and flattened, and the sow finally rested without rolling dangerously onto her young. The man crouched by the pen, counting softly. 11, still 11. Against the odds, most had made it through the danger window. He watched the runt, the one pulled from the sack at 2 a.m., breathing steady now, a faint scar across its nose from being trampled in the chaos. That scar would stay for life, a small reminder of how close it had come to never breathing at all. He rubbed his palms together, staring at the straw where it had happened. That was the moment, he admitted quietly to his wife, when I went pale. I almost threw life away because I didn't know what I was holding. His voice cracked, but this time there was no shame, only gratitude. Gratitude for the twitch he noticed, for the instinct to tear the sack, for the small life that now rooted hungrily at its mother's side. The barn looked different too. Better rails lined the walls now, tightened so there would be no hidden pockets of straw. The bedding was trimmed down, just enough for warmth, but not enough to trap. By the door, a kit sat ready. Lengths of clean string, folded towels, even a bulb syringe for clearing airways. No more scrambling for scraps, no more near misses. But he knew not all could be saved. In the far corner of the barn, a small grave marked the one lost that night. They had given it a moment of respect, acknowledging its short life without turning the focus away from the living. Farming had taught them long ago that life and loss came hand in hand. Still, this loss cut deeper because it might have been different. He turned back to the pen, and hope lifted in his chest. The runt nudged forward, jostling against stronger siblings, slipping, fumbling, then finally latching on, teat in its mouth, tiny jaw working with stubborn determination. Against all odds, it had found its place. The man let out a slow breath, the weight of the last 48 hours settling into something like peace. He hadn't just witnessed birth, he had witnessed how fragile and fierce life could be at the same time. And in that moment, he knew this wasn't triumph. It was something better. Gratitude. He glanced once more at the scarred little runt, then at the lens of the camera still watching from the rafters. If you want more true rescue moments like this, and the lessons hidden inside them, make sure you're subscribed. And tell me, what would you have done when that afterbirth kicked?